Hey everybody, we're going to talk about simplifying radicals. So a radical just meaning like the square root type things. And so I want to do it two different ways, which is why I've written this twice. And the reason I'm doing that is because some people do better with one way, some do better with another. So just choose which one you like best and do it that way. You don't have to do it both ways. But I'm going to show you the way I do it, and then I'm going to show you a way a lot of people like to do it. The best way, or not the best way, but the way I do it is when I look at the square root of 120, I'm asking myself, what is the biggest perfect square that goes into 120? Now let's first figure out what is a perfect square. So if I go down here, a perfect square would be numbers like 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, so on and so forth. And the reason these are perfect squares is because 1 is 1 squared, 2 is 2 squared, 9 is 3 squared, 16 is 4 squared, so on and so forth. So these are perfect squares because you can take the square root of them, or you can say they can be represented as some number squared. So like 9 is 3 squared, so it's a perfect square. And so the question is which is the biggest one of these numbers that divides into 120? Well, we don't really worry about 1 because 1 goes into everything and it doesn't really help us here. But 4, does 4 go into 120? Well, I think 4 goes into 120 30 times. So, but the question is that the biggest one? What does 9 go into 120? If you were to try to divide it out, you'd realize it does not. The 16 go in? No. 25? No. So on and so forth. So basically 4 is the biggest one that goes into 120. So what I'm going to do though is now I'm going to rewrite the square root of 120 as the square root of 4 times 30, because 4 times 30 is the same thing as 120. And the reason this is helpful is because there's a nice rule that says if I multiply two things underneath a square root, I can separate them, meaning the square root of 4 times the square root of 30. And this helps me because I know what the square root of 4 is. The square root of 4 is 2. And then I can just bring down the square root of 30, which that would be my simplest form. So that's one way to do it. I will say I have found that most of my students do not like this way, even though there are some that do. But if you want to do it that way, fine. If not, then this next way may be the better option. So the second way is going to factor 120 just completely. So I'm not even going to worry about, if there's a perfect square that goes into it. I'm just going to factor it. So for instance, I know that 12 times 10 gives me 120. And I'm just going to keep factoring these numbers until I can't factor them anymore. So 10 is 5 times 2. And what I do, just to help me stay organized, is once I get to a prime number, I circle it. And if you don't remember what a prime number is, it's just a number that can't be factored anymore. So the only thing that multiplies is going to be 5 would be 5 and 1. The only thing that multiplies is going to be 2 would be 2 and 1. So you can't really factor it anymore. With 12, it's 2 times 6. Again, 2 cannot be factored anymore. And then 6 is 3 times 2. So again, I'm going to circle 2 and 3. Now I'm going to come up here and change my color just real quick. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look for pairings. So is there any number that repeats itself? And in this case, the 2's repeat themselves. So I have sort of a group of 2's here. And what that does is anytime I have a pairing, I need to take that pairing out of the square root. So if I look at this, I have a pair of 2's, so I'm going to take a 2 out of the square root. Now, I know I have another 2 here, but I need to look at pairing. So I have one pair here, but I can't take this 2 out because there's not another 2 sitting there. So I can only take out groups of 2, or meaning a pairing of any number that repeats itself. And then what goes inside here is just what's left. So I have 3 times 5 times 2. So 3 times 5 is 15 times 2 is 30. Which again gives me the same number. So over here, I am just trying to find the biggest perfect square that goes into 120 and then going that way. Here I'm just factoring it all the way down and then finding my pairings and taking them out. Okay. Now I am going to do a few more videos on simplifying because there's a few examples that are a little bit different than this, but I'm going to end this video here, and again I will show you some more examples.